We're gonna start, as we always do, with a reading from Discourses, and this first one is from page 66. It's about, okay, I'm just gonna read it. When there is exact balancing and overlapping of good and bad sanskaras, they both disappear, with the result that what remains is a clean slate of mind on which nothing is written, and which therefore reflects the truth as it is, without perversion. Nothing is ever written on the soul. The sanskaras are deposited on the mind and not on the soul. The soul always remains untarnished, but it is only when the mind is a clean mirror that it can reflect the truth. When the impressions of good and bad both disappear, the mind sees the soul. This is illumination. The mind seeing the soul, however, is not the same as the soul knowing itself. For the soul is not the mind, but God, who is beyond the mind. Therefore, even after the mind has seen the soul, it has to be merged in the soul if the soul is to know itself as truth. This is realization. In this state, the mind itself, with all its good and bad sanskaras, has disappeared. It is a state beyond mind, and therefore it is also beyond the distinction of good and bad. From the point of view of this state, there is only one indivisible existence, characterized by infinite love, peace, bliss, and knowledge. The perpetual strife between good and evil has disappeared because there is neither good nor evil, only the one inclusive and undivided life of God. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, it just constantly blows my mind. I've read the Discourses so many times, but it's like I never read it before, you know? And so I think it's good to know what's coming, because maybe then we're going to be more prepared, you know, when our soul just takes over completely. So now I'm just going to read, let's see. This is going to be, oh. My notes are mixed up. Okay, let me just see now. This is from page 50. The mind, becoming accustomed to certain habits of thought and response, does not find it easy to adjust itself to these new claims of its own perceptions, owing to the inertia caused by impressions of previous modes of thought and conduct. The process of readjustment in the light of true values takes the form of what we call controlling the mind. This control is not a mechanical or a forcible twisting of the mind. It is an effort of the mind to overcome its own inertia. It is fundamentally creative and not negative in its purpose, for it is an attempt of the mind to arrive at self-adjustment in order to release the expression of the true values of life. So I love what Baba says here, you know, because I used to think mind control sounded like a terrible thing, but I've realized through the work that that's what it is. It's really learning to control the mind. It's like learning to discipline the mind, because our imaginations can just get so carried away. I never realized how much that was true until I started this practice. So Baba's talking about readjusting. This is a process of readjusting in the light of true values. And so the control is not a mechanical or forcible twisting of the mind. It is an effort of the mind to overcome its own inertia. So if we look at the 4 questions of the work and the turnarounds, not as a forcible twisting, but as a opportunity to open to a larger possibility, that's really how I experience it. And I do believe that people who don't like the work could see it as a mechanical forcing, but that's not really the intention. And so when we do it, that's why we try to find examples by dropping into our inner wisdom rather than trying to force our mind to come up with some kind of a mechanical turnaround. It's really about surrendering into our intuition and then allowing those other possibilities to arise so that we can see a bigger picture of life. Does anybody have any comments that they would like to make on those quotes from discourses? Okay, so, this week we're going to continue on with part 3 of our Judge Your Neighbor worksheet on Baba. And so, as I've said before, we're doing this in the Sufi tradition of making complaints against our Lord. And really the whole purpose of it is so that our veils can be removed from us. We know that it's not about Baba, it's about us. But sometimes it just helps to project, because we can't help but project onto him. And mostly we just project our good stuff. But we can project negative things onto him. So now I'm going to read an excerpt from Effort and Grace, page 22 and 23, and it's this title is Misprojection. So, maintaining misconceptions applies not only to ourselves. It is interesting to observe that we may be unconsciously accentuating things we have observed in other people, instead of inwardly asserting and affirming the truth about their being. We make a mistake if we stereotype people. If we engage in projecting their material side back to them, it will tend to grow in them. This kind of projection embraces the limiting idea that we are all separate individuals, instead of the more comprehensive truth that, as Baba says, we at the soul level are one. So if we would look for the soul, the ideal self in others, that would become accentuated in them. Emphasizing the soul quality of others can become part of our inner work. And I have definitely found, through my practice of self-inquiry, that life becomes a lot lighter and sweeter as I do just what Darwin was talking about. I just emphasize the positive. And I think in the Catholic tradition, they talk about holding the Immaculate Concept. And I think that's another way of putting it. If we can just look for that soul in the other person, it's easier to see them instead of focusing on the material side. So I'll just read on. On the practical level, we take into account the illusory samskaric aspect of people, but at the same time regard them in the light of their true ideal self, emphasizing that rather than any other side of them. By doing this, we are helping them to remove veils. This means looking upon people as, in the last analysis, spiritual beings really seeking God. To get to this perception, affirm, Baba is doing everything. Baba is the doer. I know that for most of us, it takes an effort to project the basic truth about people. But if one can develop this more flexible attitude, this benefits not only their consciousness, but not only the other's consciousness, but their own. Because what we visualize affects our own being. If we visualize weaknesses in others, that reflects on our own consciousness. If we visualize the ideal self of others, we are calling forth the same in ourselves, the truth in our own being. It is not always easy to see the higher side of people, but it is worth trying to do. Around Baba, we would experience this kind of projection from him in a very powerful way. The radiation of Baba's presence has the effect of completely enveloping one's lower nature and calling forth one's higher self. It is not as though he is in a closed box and you are in a closed box and you do not really affect each other. He is truth and reality, and he is radiating truth and reality and light and divine love. And you are radiating falsehoods and illusion. Something has to give. So when the illusions begin to give way, light begins to dawn, and one begins to experience a deep inner integration and spiritual upliftment. Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share on that reading?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, I believe as you read and you spoke about toward the end, when a person is putting out not very positive radiation or vibes, and yet earlier you spoke about Baba is working through us, which I believe. But my question, you can hear it the way I just introduced it. If I'm putting out negative vibes or radiation, and yet Baba is working through me, we're encouraged to look at the other as a soul being a great light and love, even though they may be doing something that's irritating or annoying, even in the moment. Is the person actually having, well, I don't even want to ask the question because how could you be manifesting Baba's love through your voice and your being in one moment, and maybe an hour later, you're manifesting negativity and not radiating that love? I don't know if there's any answer to my question even, but I ask it because I thought about it.
Okay, I do have a thought. My feeling is that Baba can work through us to a greater degree when we are really in our hearts, manifesting love and seeing the soul of that other person, even though we might be aware. You know, we can't just throw out discrimination. We can see that people have issues. The whole key in the work is that we don't get triggered by it, because when we're triggered by it, that just means that there's something in our own shadow that we need to work on. So that helps us to be more humble if we're getting reactionary. If we're reacting, we know that our shadow has been triggered. But I do believe that Baba has spoken to asking us to purify our hearts so that he can live in us more and more. So I think when we aren't looking for the best in others, Baba has less opportunity to manifest through us.
Thank you. Really appreciate your share. It's true.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, that's just my feeling about it. I mean, because I know when my heart is troubled, it's harder to feel Baba, you know, for sure. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Well, and it's interesting because we've been doing the work on Baba, and okay, so the first one, 2 weeks ago, we worked on Baba makes it hard to find himself in everyone. And we had a lively session working on that. And then last week, you know, we did statement 2 from the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, which is what we want in this situation. And we worked on, I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. And I definitely found that it just opened the curtain a little bit more for me this last week, just from doing that work, you know, because whatever we put our attention on, it has an effect on us. And so I just noticed that I was more aware of wanting to see Baba in everyone. And I might not be thinking that way if I hadn't been working on it. So this week, we're going to, and of course that really speaks to what Darwin was talking about, misprojection. when we want to see Baba in everyone, then we can't misproject and just look at people's faults. We certainly don't want to do that with ourselves. I mean, who wants to look at their faults all the time? You know, it's much nicer to focus on the positives. And, you know, it reminds me of what Albert Einstein said, you don't solve problems at the level they were created. So if we just focus on our own faults and other people's faults, that's not the level where they're going to be uncreated. Our faults are going to be uncreated by focusing beyond them onto the positives. And I really feel the truth of that, because I know what it's like to dwell in misery. Before I had the work, you know, when I kind of hit bottom, it's like a bottomless pit. And so it's much better to just keep a high note and trust that Baba's going to help us consume our own shadows. I mean, everybody has to do it. The unconscious, that's what the shadow is. And when the unconscious is made fully conscious, we realize God. That's what Baba tells us. So it's a long journey, and we just keep gently working with ourselves, bringing our shadow more and more into the light, and with patience and longing and all those things that we keep reminding ourselves of. So this week, we're going to work on the advice that we would give Baba. What advice would we give him about, you know, makes it so hard to find himself in everyone? And so I decided that we would use one of the comments that Fareshte brought up. She said, Baba, why have you created this headache for yourself? And so it just came to me this week that we could incorporate this into our inquiry this week. Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself. And I think that really fits well into what we're working on, because we all agree that Baba, he does make it hard to find himself. We can also find where the opposite, where he makes it easy to find himself. But there's always going to be that test, because otherwise we wouldn't keep growing if we didn't have these challenges. So today we're going to work on that number 3, the advice we would give Baba. And we're going to look at it just in the light of how hard it is sometimes for us to see Baba in everyone. But before we get into our inquiry today, I'm going to read one more paragraph from Catching the Thread, our Sufi book that we've been looking at. So let's see, page 220. It's going to be page 220. And 221.
In Effort and Grace?
This is Catching the Thread.
Is this Effort
No, this is the book called Catching the Thread.
Oh, I don't have it.
No, it's a Sufi book, and we've been reading from it, and Fareshte said she got a copy. I think Diantha did too. It's called Sufism, Dream Work, and Jungian Psychology. And I was very impressed with the author, Llewellyn Von Lee, because he is so on the inner path of love with his beloved. And so even though he doesn't recognize Meher Baba, he does recognize Muhammad, and that's who he looks to as a Sufi. But I just find that he has inspired my own inner journey. And I'm actually going to read a little bit this week. Let's see, 220. Here we go. So this is all from the chapter about the relationship with the teacher. So he says, through the process of projection, the seeker sees the teacher as an image of his own deepest aspirations. If the seeker has sufficient faith in this image and stays true to his aspirations, he can go beyond the form of the teacher to find his own divinity. He can see his own true face reflected back. And this is something that Baba has talked to us about. You know, he has said every image, even his form as Baba, is a lie. And when we realize him, we become completely one with him. And then I'm going to read another paragraph called The Call of the Self. He says, the teacher is a stepping stone, allowing the wayfarer to cross from the world of the ego into the larger dimension of the self, with a capital S. Through the relationship with the teacher, the self is brought closer to our consciousness, and the ego is attuned to its faster vibrations. As the seeker's attention is slowly shifted from the ego to the self, he learns to live constantly listening to the hints that flow from within. The self is the core of our being. As much as it is smaller than small, hidden within the heart, so it is larger than large, embracing and permeating every cell of the body, every aspect of the human being. It is continually sending messages to the ego, trying to guide it and point it towards the goal. However, if someone is not interested in spiritual life, sees the world of the senses as the only reality, his ego will cut him off from this continual stream of inner guidance. A friend had this explained to him by a voice in a dream. And this is from the dream. People with a strong sense of ego cannot lead a guided life. Their life is guided by the will of their ego, and therefore it is impossible to allow anything else to come in. If the ego does not acknowledge the existence of any consciousness higher than itself, then there is no relationship between the ego and the self. The self still continually tries to connect with the ego, but the ego walls itself up. So the self remains an onlooker, bored by the limited perspective of a human being who does not acknowledge the limitless world of his inner being, who remains a prisoner in a world of time, caught between the opposites of life and death. The spiritual quest begins when an individual turns his attention away from the outer world of illusion and listens to the call of the self. And here's one more paragraph. Always the self calls to us, whether we listen or not. This call is our friend. It is the thread that will lead us home. But as in the words of a Persian song, it is also our punishment. The self is the enemy of the ego, demanding its surrender. For this reason, the ego will never instigate the journey that leads to its own death. We listen to the inner call only because He wills. Allah guides us to His light, whom He wills. Someone said to Rabia, I have committed many sins. If I turn in penitence towards God, will He turn in mercy towards me? Nay, she replied, but if He shall turn towards thee, thou wilt turn towards Him. The teacher.
What does that mean?
Okay.
What does that mean?
So, well, it reminds me of how Baba chooses us. We don't choose Him. He comes and steals our heart. And that's what Rabia is talking about. It doesn't matter how much we've sinned. You know, if He turns toward us, we will turn toward Him.
Thank you for that beautiful reminder. Really, that's exquisite.
Oh, yes. I know. I'm so grateful to have found these words. And then I'm just reading one more sentence. The teacher always points us away from the ego into the beyond, which is none other than our own simple essence. So many beautiful pointers. You know, that's all words are. They're just pointers. But the way the author just described the inner journey was so clear to me that I'm so aware when I reflect on his words, how sometimes my ego just doesn't want to surrender to the self. And, you know, it's just a little more pain and suffering. But slowly, slowly, we're making our way home. So, okay. So let's start our inquiry on, and the headache he's creating is how he makes it so hard for us to see him and others. So Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself. And this is such a deep philosophical question, but let's just see where we go with it today. So just take a few gentle breaths and just relax. You can do a closed-eyed meditation or an open-eyed meditation on our beloved. Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself. Is it true? No.
No.
Be sure to unmute yourself so you can give your yes or your no.
No.
I'm not sure.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the second question just for you, Tina, and I will revisit it again. And you can't do it wrong. It doesn't matter if you say yes or no. Can you absolutely know that it's true that Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself?
I would say no to that.
Okay. Yeah. Does anybody want to speak to what they found when they asked themselves that question? I mean, for me, it was just like, who am I to know what Baba should or shouldn't do? It's just like, I'm clueless, you know?
My thing was, who am I? What do I know what a headache? I mean, why would I even presume to call what Baba calls his divine game a headache?
Yes, yes. I don't know if you were here in the beginning of our session.
I got in late, yeah.
So I chose to take this statement to inquiry. It was one that Fareshte had brought up. You know, Baba, why did you create this headache for yourself? And we're using it today specifically in terms of how he makes it hard for us to see him in everyone, which is what we've been working on for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So specifically, that's the headache that we're going to work on today. Okay. And so it's interesting, we all came to the same conclusion. No, I can't know that that's true. How could we possibly know what Baba should or shouldn't do? So let's move on to question 3. So how do you react when you're believing the thought that Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself? Or if that statement doesn't work for you, when you're believing the thought that Baba shouldn't make it so hard for us to see himself in everyone. Either way, this inquiry will work for us. How do you react? So you can put up the sub-questions for question 3 now, Diantha. It always helps us to know, oh yes, I'm going to look at my emotions. I'm going to look at my physical sensations. That's how I really like to start it. And so just notice, and then if you feel like sharing, you can just speak out, like, what emotions do you feel when you're believing the thought that Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself of making it so hard to see him in everyone? What emotions do you feel when you're believing that thought? I feel a weariness.
I feel afraid.
Okay. Can you describe where you feel the fear in your body?
Yeah, like in my heart, I just feel like scared when I don't trust that he knows what he's doing.
Oh, okay.
Or just
Yeah.
like, why did he
And
create this person who's behaving this way? Or why, what is, what is this? Like, it's just
yes,
like
yes.
scared.
So, Diantha, are you willing to just travel into the physical sensations and describe it? Because this is what we all have to do. Maybe everyone can find some emotion in their heart. I can definitely feel the weariness in my heart. But if you're willing, and we can all share too, those that would like to, what is the physical sensation that that fear creates in the heart?
It's like a compression, a constriction.
Yes. And I notice I feel a trembling in my heart. So we're going to, each of us, find that sensation, and we're going to stay in it for 60 to 90 seconds, because neuroscientists have found that something else will arise after that amount of time. And most often it gives us a new awareness or a deeper place that we can go with the work that we're doing. So I invite everyone to go into the witness mode as the objective observer and find those sensations, whatever arose for you in whatever part of your body, and just breathe with it and notice if it diminishes, or if another image arises, or if it morphs into something else. All of those are possibilities. So we're just going to stay with that now and just breathe gently. Focus, focus, focus. And if anyone cares to share what you experienced, please feel free. I noticed in my trembling heart, my weary heart, what I noticed, if I just witnessed it, a release began slowly. I felt energy releasing through both of my arms and my upper back, a relaxing, a letting go. And I feel more of just not worrying, just knowing that Bob has got it. He's got it covered. Would anyone else like to share anything before we go on to another sub-question? Okay. Whose business are we in when we're believing the thought that Baba shouldn't create this headache for himself? Whose business are we in? Of course, we're in Baba's business, and when we do a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, we're always in somebody else's business, which is always the cause of suffering. But sometimes we have to go through the steps in order to recognize the, kind of futility of judging anyone. But through these steps, we're actually withdrawing the projection, which is, Jungian psychology tells us that the only way for the unconscious to become conscious is through projection. So we have to project. And at least through this process, it's helping us recognize that we're projecting, that it's not ever the other person. And then through this inquiry, we're identifying the projection, and now we're slowly withdrawing it. And then the next step is that we will integrate it. And that's how we complete this whole cycle of needing to project and then owning it for ourselves and integrating it. And as we withdraw the projection, we do feel the pain of what we've been denying in ourselves. We don't have to even know where the pain comes from. We just need to honor and respect it, because when we do that, the pain is able to release itself. And it's an ongoing journey. So let's look at, how do we treat Baba when we're believing the thought that he should make it easier for us to see himself in everyone? How do we treat Baba when we're believing that thought that he should do this for us? And please just speak out when you notice what feels true for you.
Maybe angry.
Okay, yeah, definitely. You're supposed to make this easier, Baba. You should make it easier. I notice that I'm treating him like I'm in charge, like he's supposed to do what I say, which is really not a very pleasant awareness for me to recognize. And yet I can see where I do that, even subconsciously quite often. I've done a lot of work on that life is too hard. And it's just something I keep working at. And I intellectually understand that it's exactly as it needs to be. And yet there's times when I feel it's just too hard, and maybe that just means I'm supposed to take a break and just really take care of myself and slow down. So how do we treat Baba when we're believing that thought? Well, we can get angry. We can act like we're in charge. What else? Anything else?
Just feeling very disconnected.
Did you say disconnected?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, definitely. I can feel that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I feel isolation, like I'm isolating. I'm definitely not treating him like he's the avatar.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's notice, how do we treat ourselves when we're believing the thought that Baba should make it easier for us to see him in everyone? How are we treating ourselves?
Think we are treating ourselves very lovingly, with great compassion, when we see Baba in everyone and everything. I mean, it's just a very loving connection.
But that's not the question, is it? I think it's like, how do we treat ourselves when we believe the thought that
Yeah. So what you did, Jeff, is you kind of went to question 4, which is beautiful, who you would be without the thought. And so that's wonderful. So let's back up a little bit and notice, how are we treating ourselves when we're believing that he should make it easier? It's not easy. We're having a really hard time seeing him in a particular person. We've all chosen a particular person for these 4 weeks of inquiry. And so yes, without the thought, beautiful.
That would feel stressful.
Yeah.
And trying to make things different than what they are. It's pushing reality.
Yes.
You can't fight reality. As difficult as it may be, I don't want this. Well, Baba, why can't you change, Baba? I would never say that. I would be extremely arrogant, and that's also not minding my business, minding Baba's business. I can see if I was in that state of mind, I would feel very stressed. I would also feel, and sense, what an arrogant guy you are to even be moving in that direction.
Yes, definitely. Yes. And I also notice when I'm believing the thought that Baba, you should make it easier, life should be easier. That's been something I've worked on. I'm just treating myself like a victim, like, poor me. You know what? I can't do this on my own. So I need you to give me I need special help. I can't follow the rules you've created for us. It's too hard.
That definitely is the unconscious. That's a real projection for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's like giving up, like, no, this is too much. You're going to have to change the rules. I can't do this. I've been there. I mean, I'm really telling you the truth. I've been through this, and I catch it now because I've done so much work, but there are times when it just seems a bit too much. So good to notice. So do any addictions or obsessions manifest when you're believing the thought that Baba should make it easier for us to see him in everyone?
Well, with my person, I had a desire for revenge. Get back at him.
Okay, so that's your addiction or obsession, is revenge. Good to notice. Yes. Which boomerangs back on yourself, right? It's a very unpleasant emotion.
Yeah, we were definitely in a war.
Good to notice. Thank you for that. So my addiction is definitely like to drink or eat food when I, just to sort of like go unconscious. It happens. Okay. What are you unable to do when you're believing the thought that Baba should make it easier for us to see himself in that person that we just struggle over? What are we unable to do when we're believing that thought?
Surrender and accept the moment just as it is.
Absolutely.
Not want to change it. Can I, when something, as you said, and the pressure of something happens and you want it not to be that way, and
You're having such a thunderstorm. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to turn off my sound.
Oh dear.
You don't hear it?
No, but I can hear you really clearly.
Yeah, it just like scared me. I'm sorry.
it's okay. It's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, we're supposed to have big thunderstorms here too, but yeah, so we were on what are you unable to do when you're believing that thought that Baba should make it easier to see him in this person. When I'm believing that thought, I'm just I'm copping out. I'm not even making the effort. I'm just like, I'm not surrendered to Baba. I'm surrendered to my ego, actually. And my ego, and I've seen through doing this work on this person that I'm so invested in my beliefs about this person who's one of my family members, that it would be an ego death for me to actually see Baba in her completely. And I guess I have to take it slow and easy because I'm not quite there yet. And she always shows me where my work is. She definitely does. But because of what I see, the projection I see in her that I don't like, which is a sort of controlling and perfectionism, I know that that's how I am, but I never saw it before. Now I see it. But she's always showing it to me. So I have to keep working at it. This is really deep stuff, I'm telling you. It's amazing what we'll see about ourselves that was a blind spot when we're really willing to look at what this person brings up in us. And that doesn't mean you have to hang out with them, you know, because that might not be very helpful. So what do you fail to see when you're believing that thought that Baba should make it easier to see himself in that person that you're working on? What do you fail to see when you're believing Baba should make it easier?
Like the slogan, they're not doing it to you, they're just doing it.
Yeah, they're just doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, and what Byron Katie would say is, they're not doing it to you, they're doing it for you. They're showing us where our work is. And so, yeah. You know, and we can only, go ahead, Tina.
With my difficult person, my father, if I could go back, I could do it so much better now.
Yes. And because you've done that work, it's already healed your relationship with your father.
You know what I think would be good to do? Take some really negative figure like Hitler and do the work on him.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably have.
I think I've said before, you know, that Katie said, until you can love Hitler, your work's not done. I think last week I read that quote where Baba had two of his disciples, one loved Nehru, one hated Nehru, when he was the president, and he made them each, it was totally the work, he made the one who loved Nehru give some bad points about him, and he made the one who hated Nehru give good points, and he made them go back and forth and back and forth. And that's exactly, you know, what we have to learn to do so that we don't get attached to any polarity of duality. We have to be able to see, we can easily see the bad in Hitler because of history. But you know what? He had a lot of good points too, and it's just good to notice.
Yeah, he was a vegetarian and an artist. He didn't believe in eating meat because he didn't want to kill little animals.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it interesting? But the ego always wants to pigeonhole somebody, but everybody's soul is there. And, you know, I just say across the whole spectrum of famous people, if you get triggered by them, you know, start writing down their good points, because they're just showing you your shadow. So this is the only way to go past the mind and get beyond duality. So who would you be? We can go back to beautiful Baba's picture now, Diantha. Who would you be without the thought that Baba shouldn't make it so hard for us to find him in everyone? I've reverted back to our original because it just feels better as we're in the inquiry. So who would you be without the thought that Baba shouldn't make it so difficult to see himself in everyone? Who are you without that thought? I notice I'm just someone who's accepting this journey that I'm on, that Baba's provided for us, and I'm just trusting that he knows what he's doing. Anybody else?
I feel like when I'm hating on someone, I'm sort of in the grip of it. It's hard to get past it. So I think like if I didn't have that thought, I would be more liberated,
Beautiful.
free.
Yes.
It's funny
Yes.
that it's
Go
funny
ahead.
that I'm not visible, but there that I checked in today because in my mind I wouldn't even consider this person. It's a family member to look for Baba in them. I wouldn't even. I wouldn't. You know, the person's just a problem. So it's interesting. And it bothers me very much still, and I'm not even around the family. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to try to work it out. And, you know, there was all sorts of things involved. There was incest, and I reported it. And, you know, I feel the person hates me. And, you know, and I can't really do anything about his hating me, you know, and acting accordingly. But anyway, but it still bothers me. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean,
Well, you know, Rosalie, the work on family is the deepest core work that we can do. So
yeah.
that's, just know that it's, I mean, I've done the work. Had to do the work so many times, you know, on my father specifically before it was completely cleared out. And so that is the deepest core work. And there's something else I wanted to say. What was it?
but it's
So,
go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was saying, I was doing this heart meditation that we do after Effort and Grace, and the person showed up and my father showed up, and there is definitely, I knew that connection, you know.
Yes.
And, but I was surprised that my father's on the other side, you know.
Yes.
But, you know, there's a whole thing, there's a trust, and the trust is like kind of a twisted knife. Every time I receive my $100 check each month, you know, it's very interesting. And I even thought of canceling out receiving that, but anyway, I'm still wrestling with it, you know, and haven't been able to, but I never even thought of seeing Baba in the person. No, they're just off the chart for me. I just feel they hate me so much that, you know, I just, you know.
So here's the thing that's really helpful, Rosalie.
Yeah.
To really practice recognizing that this world is just a dream that we're waking up from. Baba tells us this over and over again, and Byron Katie says the same thing. The reason I love the work is because everything she says is aligned with what Baba says. It's just very difficult to get to there from here because the mind is dual. You know, we do project good and evil. But Baba says he's in everyone. He's in the rapist. He's in the incestuous one. He's in everyone. And what I've come to see over the years, because I've worked with a lot of people, and Katie herself was, you know, she was raped as a child. But you come to the place where you absolutely recognize that it was a dream. to simply so that you could wake up and realize God. You know, it's like Katie says, if you're having a nightmare, you don't wake up when the dream is good. So if we're having a really good life, we're just going to keep carrying on and enjoying it. But when the nightmare happens, that's how most of us get inspired to start waking up and looking for the ultimate truth. So in ultimate reality, it's all a dream. It never happened. And, you know, what I've found in working with people, you know, who've been raped and incested and all that is that there is a place for forgiveness and that the soul has never been violated. There, you know, it's like you are pure and whole, and the forgiveness, and that doesn't mean you condone the behavior, but the forgiveness is actually for your own freedom of just letting yourself go. Katie's worked with Holocaust survivors. So for decades and decades, they've carried this terrible story of being in the concentration camps. And Katie says to them, you know, victims are the most violent people because yes, a terrible thing happened to you, but you've been revolving it for all these years. So that's doing violence. So that's why, as difficult as that work is, when we can really recognize that it's a dream and we can let it go, then we can finally be free to experience what Baba wants us to experience, which is our absolute oneness with him. This has all been a dream. So it's hard work. There's no question about it.
But it's interesting because I was not involved in the incest, but I was the one that told my parents about it. So,
Yeah.
So anyway,
so,
but then at the years later, when my father died, before my father died, this brother went to him to have the trust changed against me and used Baba as a reason, you know, so it's really a crazy thing that I was following a cult. And, you know, and my father says, well, okay, change the trust. So, yeah. And I just thought in my father's senility, because my father didn't have a clue who Baba was. I never talked to my father about it.
Yeah.
So
you know what?
Yeah.
That reminds me of the story of Bao's wife, who had all this gold jewelry, and then the thieves came and stole it. And I remember Baba told her that she got rid of so many sanskaras. And so I immediately thought of that when you said, you know, that he wrote you out of the will. You probably just unloaded a ton of sanskaras. So that's the good way to look at it, right?
Yeah. But yeah.
Life is so you know, we can't understand Baba's ways. We can't understand it because it's so beyond the mind. I mean, to even recognize that Baba's in everyone, and he's the worst, you know, he's the lowest of the low and the highest of the high. And, you know, and he said, good is closer to God than bad, but we just can never judge. We just don't know. But we can forgive and let go, if for no other reason than to be free so that we can be with Baba more and more. And that would be my motivation, to let go and forgive those who have harmed me.
I never thought of forgiving this person, but I can't let go of he did wrong me, and he's, you know, it's not a just thing, you know. And so I don't know, in a way I don't hate him, or, you know, I'm very happy I'm not around him. Very.
Of course. Yes,
But
yes. I always tell people, you know, the work that you do on them, and it doesn't mean you have to hang out with them.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we don't have to be masochists. Yeah.
But
Okay. Go ahead, Rosalie.
no, but I was just thinking that I would so often say, Baba, give me a clue. Did I do something to this person that this occurred? I mean, I don't get any clue. I don't get any clue of that, you know.
Well,
Cer-
I do remember Baba saying that we embody in these karmic groups in our family over and over and over again. So I do believe that the family we're born into, we have a lot of karma to work out.
Mhm.
And so for us being with Baba, we know that means just letting it go and just remembering Baba more and more and not reacting to, like in my situation right now, you know, with one of my sisters, I really make a huge effort to be loving and kind to her because it's not my inclination, but I just want to be free. And I know that she's there to show me where my work is. So the person who has wronged you, just know that he's your pathway to freedom. When you can just let it go completely, it's just gonna be for you to be closer and closer to Baba. And we don't have to know the karmic past. I don't know that it's necessary. I think that's why we have the veils over us. We don't have to know all that stuff. What we do have to know is just how to not create more sanskaras, you know.
Yeah, but that would sure help to know that veil. Really.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what? I truly believe that if it would really help you, Baba would remove the veil. And I believe that it probably wouldn't help. If it would help, you would know. That's my own personal
I
thought.
know. And then I always think, you know, the avatar always makes a mistake. I always think of that, you know. It's like,
I know, but didn't he already say what mistake he made?
I don't
I'm trying
think
to
so.
remember.
I don't think so.
I know you say he ran out of good matches for children and parents in the baby.
Yes, yeah, I've heard that, and that I believe, you know.
Oh yeah, I definitely believe that one.
Yeah, I mean that's a common rumbling of the grapevine.
He said something else about a mistake he made, but it's not coming to me right now. It's probably in Lord My Hair, but
He says
anyway.
he always makes a mistake as avatar. You know?
Right.
But yeah, that just kind of helps me vent a little. Just that, well, I made a mistake with my family. You know, like wow.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so ironic that Baba's involved in the mistake. You know, it's like wow. Yeah.
He's involved in everything.
Yeah.
He's the director, the producer, and all the actors, and you know, the whole thing. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? So let's move on to the turnarounds. And so we're going to turn around that Baba shouldn't make it hard to find himself in, and then I have everyone, but you have the person. So in so-and-so, you know. And so if we turn that around to ourselves, I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba in me. Can you find that? Can you find an example where I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba, to find Baba in me?
You mean yourself, like myself?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
This is called the turnaround to the self. So I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba in me.
Just the question is a freeing question. Such a beautiful question. I mean, that question, what do I do so that I don't see Baba in myself? That's such an opening, freeing question.
Yeah. I mean, I know that sometimes it's like, I just forget about Baba. So I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba in me when I just kind of go AWOL
Yeah. Funny.
Can everybody find those examples in their own life?
Oh, of course.
Okay. I shouldn't make it so hard. Yeah. So our original statement is Baba shouldn't make it so hard to see himself and everyone. So then we would do, I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba in everyone. That would be the turnaround to the other. I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba in everyone.
I have to be grateful that I can see Baba in more people than this brother of mine.
Oh,
I mean, I have to
beautiful.
be grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't that one of the beauties of this community that we have, especially right now, this virtual community? We can
Yeah.
see Baba. It's so easy to see Baba in all of our Baba lover community. I know sometimes it's not, but it oftentimes is, right?
So with like-minded people, it's easier to see Baba.
Yes.
And they're talking
Yes.
about Baba. But just
And
the
I,
general population, maybe not so easy.
yeah. And you know, Baba loves it when we come together, right? That's what he likes us to do. We can just come together and talk about Baba. You know, so much. It's endless, all that we can do. So I shouldn't make it so hard to see Baba in everyone. And an example for me would be by joining into some of these virtual Baba things and, you know, watching the Baba videos, and, you know, then it's easier. Whatever I can infuse in my life that's Baba, then it's easier for me to see him in everyone. I love to meditate on his picture in the morning, and I love to read a little bit, and I love to, you know, go to the circle of friends, and so those are examples of how I shouldn't make it so hard. I just need to do those things. Does anybody else have an example?
Well, I was thinking about, you know, in Darwin's book, Effort and Grace, that we can, because of our whatever attitudes, we can limit what Baba can do with us. You know,
Absolutely.
that was a recent thing. A lot of recent things coming up, and now at this meeting, I know I was at your meeting last week. You know, just the questions that I never thought. Those questions, I wouldn't have thought that question. You know, so it's valuable. You know, and I was just talking to my therapist today about the same old problem. So it's interesting. Yeah. So maybe this is my crossroads.
Yeah, well, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, the work is just a way to unwind these stressful thoughts that I have just found to be so helpful. And I always felt that Baba brought the work to me as a bridge so that I could come closer to him. And somehow just turning all these thoughts around just has been very liberating. And it's also helped me to be way more detached. I didn't know how to love unconditionally and be detached before I found the work. And the work has actually really given me the, you know, the ability to live much more with detachment. And you know, Baba wants us to be detached and loving. And I couldn't figure that one out before. So let's look at the turnaround to the opposite. So Baba should make it hard for us to see him in everyone. Baba should make it hard for us to see him in everyone. And when we do the turnaround to the opposite, you know, I always tell my clients, it's like the free pass. You can always say, because it's reality. That's just an example. If it's hard, it's hard. And that's how it should be. You know, reality rules. What would be another example? Baba should make it hard to see him this person that it's so hard for us to see him in.
Well, he succeeded. He has made it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and remember he said, if God realization was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. It couldn't be God realization. So it's not supposed to be easy, is it?
I have a
No.
question. I have a question. So the ego, ego, edging God out. When the ego's job is to make us mad and sad and upset and attached. I don't know if it is Baba who is really writing that script for us. I think the mind is a very, very potent projecting mechanism, and it's about at least beginning to see how that ego gets us into projecting, and the projecting gets us into negativity. I don't know if Baba is really so instrumentally directing that. I don't know about the samsaras. I'm learning more and more about it, but I'm not trying to be challenging or disrespectful. I wonder if anybody has any insight. How much does the ego play in our getting caught in that negativity versus is Baba really that much more directive in our whole negative ways than the ego? It's a question I have for a
Well,
long time.
and I think it's a huge subject. I do. And we could probably spend a long time talking about it. Does anybody have any thoughts on what Jeff said?
Well, I just think of from the effort and grace, we are nothing. The truth of the matter is we don't really exist.
Yes.
God alone is real. And, so yeah, I mean, that's the Leela of it. Of course, he suffers everything. I mean, he takes on all the suffering of the universe, everything, because he's the firstborn. He has to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a loving act,
He
God
is.
love.
I agree. He is taking on the suffering and experiencing it. My question is he directing that suffering that we go through, that he goes through, experiencing our pain, or to what degree do we create these leelas, as you mentioned? To what degree does the mind, with all its wild horse thoughts, go galloping in many directions? I won't let you be happy. I will make you angry. I will make you sad. I will make you depressed. Is Baba doing that? Or is it something like Byron Katie's wonderful questions that Anne is doing with us? What question can you even ask yourself to turn it around? I find it so wonderful with these turnaround questions, but I don't know if Baba has that much control in the suffering that we go through. I think a lot of it is our own doing because our mind is so habituated to not being able to ask possibly turnaround questions. That's a wonderful pathway out of the contracted mind. Wonderful, wonderful pathway.
Well, I'm reminded, I'm trying to find this quote. I thought I read it last week, but it was about the train. It was from Mani, and Baba was describing kind of free will and fate. Did I read that last week? Did I, Diantha? Okay, so the gist of the story, Jeff, is that the fate, the things we can't change are like the train. It's on the railroad tracks. And you're destined to take a particular train and to have successes and failures in this particular life. It's all set up for us, okay? But in the coach of the train, you have some free will. Mani said, you can play cards, you can talk to your friends, you can go to sleep.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of free will, but that train that you're on was decided in the beginning. And I'm reminded of that as you've brought up this big question about, I mean, it's a huge question. And I have to say, ultimately, Baba does everything, but it's effort and grace. I believe we can make effort and then there's grace. And so I'm aware sometimes when it's my ego, sometimes I'm unconscious of it. And am I feeling like I can make the effort to surrender that ego to what I know Baba would like? And so it's all a mystery, but I definitely feel that we can make effort, and that, you know, some things are fated and some things we can deal with.
Thank
And
you.
I don't know if that helps at all.
Yes, it does.
Oh, good.
It
Oh,
helps
good.
more than I can express in thank you. It does help.
Oh,
Really.
wonderful.
But I would
When-
say the avatar takes on certainly all the mental pain too. All the mental pain, because he says the mental pain is worse than physical pain.
Yes.
So of course, why wouldn't he take everything on? He's taking on the suffering. I mean, and we have a part in it. But I remember way back one time, Don Stevens said, at the point of creation, we all, as God, created our path. And so we can complain to Baba, but we originated it too, but who else can understand, because he's completed the whole journey and he's back. Yeah, Ali all free, I mean,
Yeah.
I see it as that, he's the firstborn. So
Yes.
he has to keep coming back, because if you're the firstborn child, it's a rough position, and a lot of responsibility, Of course,
Yes.
he has the bliss along with it, but
Yeah.
still,
Thank goodness.
yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about physical pain and mental pain in previous inquiry circles, and the fact that sometimes we get the physical pain because that's not as intense as the mental pain. And that's always useful to remember when we're in physical pain, is that, oh, this is actually Baba's giving us something easier than what we might be suffering otherwise. So, because I know mental suffering is really the hardest.
And I would say in our country, wherever, probably the world, depression is like mega epidemic, and especially like in Corona time, we're all in our little cubicles, whatever, and you could realize more of that suffering,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
anyway,
when we suffer, we're burning up samskaras too. So.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for coming into the meeting and because I just would have never thought, in that line. I just wouldn't have, I had my one very strong thought. And so, I mean, Baba gives me tools. I think this is a good tool.
Yes. Yes. And to me, the whole purpose of the work is to just come closer to Baba.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of it. And of course, my joy has been finding Baba's words and weaving them in with the work to show the harmony that is there. Because I just came to a point where I got tired of just doing the work with the clients who come to me, through Katie's website, and just wanting to be with Baba more. And that was really what motivated me when I saw how Baba's words so supported this inquiry process. And so that's the reason. So I have some ending quotes, but does anybody have anything else they'd like to say before we close today?
I wanted to give a one line by Baba.
Oh, good.
It's so good. It came through Narina Machiavelli, but I took it in because I thought that's what's happening.
Okay.
Love makes fast progress through its unbroken action of divine light.
Thank you.
That to me, it's so, it says it all, you know, it's like, it says
Read it again, Rosalie, please.
love makes fast progress through its unbroken action of divine light.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that helps me.
Yeah.
I go back to that line because I thought, wow, speak of getting mileage for a one-liner. Whoa.
Yeah. Okay. I have, this is a letter from Baba to Kitty, and it's from her book, Love Alone Prevails, page 142. And this was written in November of 1936. Darling Saroja, and then I'm just gonna read a few paragraphs. Your heart is so wonderful, always feeling so deeply and truly and responsive to the call and understanding, but the peculiar mind of yours at times wobbles and tries to shake your faith, and your love revives it all again and afresh. One moment you feel prepared to do and stand anything. The next moment you hesitate with ifs and buts and feel depressed and worried unnecessarily. But I will see that this eternal struggle between the head and the heart, for you as well as for all others who suffer from the same weakness, ends eventually in the victory of the heart over the head and brings about a blending of the two. In fact, I am working at it, suffering myself almost all the while of being misunderstood every moment and in every act of compassion in raising the consciousness and understanding of humanity to a higher level, even by my own, who have known me and have been in my closer contact. Just a little individual effort to understand and do as I say, and it would save so much trouble and pains for me and for all. My love to all and self, signed MS Irani. So there it is, that wobbly mind, and he is trying to bring about the victory of the heart over the head and a blending of the two. And Byron Katie says, the questioned mind drops into its sweet home in the heart. So for some of us who have the wobbly thinking mind, I have found that by questioning it, it actually frees up my heart. It's like the mind surrenders and drops into its home in the heart, where we can just live more and more in love. And I have another quote that I'd like to read to you that's pretty short. It's from The Gift of Love, Arnavaz's book. And then I'm just going to say something about it, because when I read this quote, I thought, oh, this is really what we're talking about here. That's life is a dream that we're waking up from. So this is the 3 types of obedience. So Baba gave a specific discourse during the Sahavas about obedience and faith, in which he explained 3 types of obedience. Using as an example a man named Gadakar, who was seated in front of him, Baba said, "You all have seen Gadakar sitting here. Suppose I were to tell you that he is not sitting in front of me." The first type of obedience would be simply to agree that he is not there. The second type of obedience would be to agree, thinking there must be some special meaning attached to my statement. The third and rarest type of obedience would be not to see Gadakar sitting there. And I love this because that's ultimately where we have to go. This is all a dream. Nothing has ever happened and nothing ever will happen. And when we stop believing that this illusion is real, you know, then we're able to do what Baba said. It also reminds me of The Taming of the Shrew, if you're familiar with that Shakespeare play, where Kate, the shrew, she finally came to the point where if her paramour, whatever his name was, said, the moon is out, during the day, the sun was shining at night, she agreed with him. And I mean, it's a wonderful story, and it's something I've thought about a lot, because I tend to be kind of feisty, and I've really worked at being more just surrendering, like with my husband, in that way of just, if he says something, just go with it, just so that I can be free, so that I can come closer to Baba, so that I can, have that rare type of obedience that Baba wants from us, So thank you all for sharing your beautiful hearts today. And we have one more session next week, and we'll finish up this worksheet and hear all of your beautiful, it's just really special, very special to me when you share your thoughts and your heart with the circle here. So
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very,
You're
very
welcome.
much. Thank you,
You're
Baba.
so welcome. Thank you, Baba. Thank you, Baba, for bringing us together.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
good tool. It's a good tool.
Yeah,
Thank you, Byron.
it's
Katie.
lovely having you here, Rosalie. Thank you for coming.
Well, I was happy I came, just it was timely, but I had come a couple